Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today. We are going to be talking about how to master the rapidly changing technology landscape that we're experiencing in the staffing industry today. With me, I have Maurice Fuller. You probably recognize him either by face or name or both. He's the founder of StaffingTec and has more than 25 years of experience in the staffing industry. He's also been leading staffing technology initiatives for the last actually over 2 decades. And so today we're going to be chatting at a high level about Maurice's background, why he has a passion about this technology space. And then we're going to dive right in about how technology is really rapidly changing and what that means for the staffing and recruiting industry. We're going to talk about some really specific trends going on, like robotic process automation and autonomous staffing and recruiting, and a few other trends. And then we're going to see just really talk through some companies that are doing a great job of this today, and then provide you with some key takeaways. So if you as a staffing or recruiting firm owner want to be on the cutting edge of the technology that's really shaping the industry, we want to tell you how to do that. So thanks for joining us today, Maurice.
Hey, Kelly, thank you so much for having me.
Great. Well, why don't we go ahead and get started? Would love to hear at a high level your background, and why you're passionate about this technology space.
Yeah, certainly. Well, I started in the recruiting industry about 25 years ago, working actually as a recruiter, and I moved after a few years up into the management ranks, and fairly quickly I discovered the power of technology to help staffing firms grow faster and operate more efficiently. So from very early on, I started acquiring and implementing technology, and we started capturing market share relative to our competition, and we started doing better and better and growing at an accelerated pace. So that's how I became hooked. Eventually, I was leading a team of developers, implementing lots of custom software. And I did that for many, many years, worked in the staffing industry for 18 years. And then I started my own firm focused on consulting and training, which evolved into the StaffingTec conference. And today my focus is on helping staffing firms with their digital transformation and with their roadmap. So I spend most of my time talking to staffing technology leaders. I see hundreds of demos every day, and I spend a lot of time talking to staffing firm leaders, and I help them with their roadmaps and digital transformations, and helping connect them to the right products to grow faster and operate more efficiently. I think I have one of the best jobs in the staffing industry.
You get to have a ton of fun. And, I know we worked together on, a platform you've developed that showcases all of those different great technology leaders and services that are helping to really innovate this industry. And so it makes sense that if you're talking day in, day out to all of these providers, that you understand what's available to staffing firms.
Sure.
And I would imagine that that is so different. I mean, I've been around the staffing space for the last 10, little over 10 years. And, it's so different from then to now. I can't imagine what it was, 18 years ago to now. So can you share a little bit more about really how technology is rapidly changing and what that means for the staffing industry?
Yeah, so historically, our industry has been very manually intensive. So in order to get work done, we've had to throw human beings onto the challenge of connecting candidates to job opportunities and to basically manage the staffing process. Very, very manually intensive. And we're in this period of time now where it's moving digital, it's becoming automated, and it's very exciting. It's not happening exactly overnight, although some firms have leaped forward and they're really operating in the future now. I call those companies the Teslas of the staffing industry,
Right.
that have just made the leap. But many other current firms are incrementally getting there, some through custom software, many through just off-the-shelf software. And everything's changing. It's really, really interesting.
Yeah. Oh, I agree completely. And some of these new trends coming down the pipe and are happening right now, robotic process automation or RPA, autonomous staffing. Can you speak to some of the key trends that you're seeing that you think staffing firm leaders really need to be paying attention to right now?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of trends, and I'll quickly run through them. The first one is mobile. And if you're if you're investing in software and there's a user component on the candidate or the employee side or even the management side, you should think about mobile first, because that's how people engage with your firm, is through these phones. It's amazing. We've got a, basically like a, very powerful computer in everybody's hands, and we should really be taking full advantage of that to personalize the experience. The second is conversational systems and bots. Every staffing firm in the future will have a sophisticated conversational system at the heart of their business to engage with candidates and engage with employees, even with your clients. AI will be everywhere. I mean, we're really just now starting to see really interesting things happening with AI and staffing. I mean, truly breakthroughs that are breathtaking. And the area that you're in, digital marketing, that's extremely important to the success of staffing firms. Data. Traditionally, the data we've had is just the data contained within our ATS, but now data is coming in from all kinds of different sources. And so managing data effectively, a much larger data set than we've managed in the past, is going to become imperative. 5G is going to open up a whole new set of applications that will run on our phones, that will basically connect us even closer together with the candidates and clients and employees that we're working with, and create all kinds of new use cases.
Well, and that could be like automation, or excuse me, augmented reality, which has been around for a long time, but to my knowledge, no one's using that in a recruiting sense right now. And so that'll be really interesting to see.
Yeah, exactly. So for example, one of the interesting use cases is these VR, AR goggles. Imagine being able to put those on and experience a job from the perspective of the person actually doing the job, right? I want to experience what it's like to be a software engineer. Okay, put on these goggles and you can experience that. I want to experience what it's like to work behind the counter at McDonald's. Okay, here you go. This is how it actually feels to do that job. Or here's what it's like to be a forklift driver. So it's very interesting how these technologies will allow people to test drive jobs, and that's happening now. That's not futuristic. There are staffing firms that are already doing that. Awesome. And then hyper automation, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Digital engagement, that's simply the idea that instead of humans driving every communication with candidates, employees, and field employees, and clients, more and more of this is happening digitally, just like Amazon communicates to you digitally. It's extremely unusual for you to have a conversation with a human being at Amazon. Everything is done digitally, and that's how we're moving in the staffing industry. This idea of autonomous staffing, where placements are made without recruiters involved, only at the beginning stages when they're qualified, and placements are made automatically. That's moving along very rapidly. And then this idea of building a remote first workplace where people working remotely have the exact same experience as somebody working within the office.
No, absolutely. And, it's interesting as people are hearing you say these things, and these topics have been coming for the last number of years. Some are more recent than others. I can't help but wonder if a staffing or recruiting firm leader or recruiter themselves are wondering, okay, well, say we go to this autonomous staffing and this Amazon model where my role looks very different because I come in when there's actually this different level of need for it, as opposed to every stage of the game. This may be a controversial answer or topic, but what do you think is going to happen to the future of recruiters? Like,
that's
do you think
a really
they should
interesting
be
question.
Excited or pivoting their skill set? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. I don't know there's a right answer, but I'm curious.
Actually, the future for recruiting is extremely exciting, because a lot of the most interesting work is what recruiters will be able to really concentrate on and focus on. Recruiters fundamentally, they like to talk to people. They like to help them with their careers. They like to interview them, assess them, negotiate with them. Those are the high value activities. And by automating a lot of the routine activities and the transactional activities, it allows us to really hone in and focus in on those. And so the automation component is going to attract a higher caliber individual, and it's going to enable recruiters to focus on the highest value activities. So it's actually a really exciting future ahead for recruiting.
Because it allows recruiters and recruiting firm leaders to focus on the things that probably got them into the business, as opposed to the things that are the maintenance that ensure successful placements and successful partnerships. So
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. Is there anything else you'd like to share around, autonomous staffing or robotic process automation? And if not, I'd love to hear about, some companies that you've seen that are doing these things really well.
Yeah, just to circle back to on that part about recruiting, when I do analysis of staffing firms and I look at their processes on the recruiting side, it's astonishing how manually intensive processes are. And I think with companies that are investing in RPA and automating these processes, it's really streamlining so much. So RPA is really one of the most important technologies that staffing firms can be investing in today. There are many tools out there that are available to staffing firms, for example, Sense and Herefish. There are other tools that are not quite as staffing industry specific, like Catalytic and UiPath, and many other tools. So I would imagine the typical staffing firm will have at least one, if not multiple RPA tools for.
And by RPA, you mean the robotic process automation,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay,
And it's simple tools could be like Zapier for doing simple automations to tools for automating the process of connecting to VMS systems,
right.
or you look at every aspect of the staffing business that's rife for automation. So what I believe is that within a decade, the typical staffing firm will have 1,000 automations running the business. And automation is, with Herefish, is 4 steps. So 4 steps times 1,000 is 4,000 lines of code. It's not that many when you think about it to streamline your business. And that's going to happen within the next 10 years. So there's 2,500 business days between now and 2031. That's about one automation every 2.5 days. And it's not like you can just buy a package of these automations and plug them in. You have to build these yourself. So the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the next best time is today. And it's the same thing with automations. Now is the time to get started with your automation journey because you have a lot of automations ahead. But the companies that are automating are seeing great success. It's one of the highest ROI investments that you can be making in your staffing firm today.
Right. And if the future is 1,000 per staffing firm, what would you say based on what you've seen? Like, what's the number right now? Is it 25 to 50 that most?
Yeah, I think for the companies that have invested in RPA, it's somewhere from anywhere from, let's say, 10 automations to 200 to 300, maybe at the very upper end.
Right.
And then, but typical is probably about, from the firms that I'm working with, I typically see 20, 30, 40, something like that. And I encourage all of them to increase that number substantially.
Right. And would you put an example as, let's say, an alumni consultant campaign? All right. So these are the consultants we've had out in the field that we don't have a role for right now, but we want to stay in touch with them. So we've got this workflow that touches them every so often with information that comes from the recruiter, but it's all automated. Would that be an example in your mind?
Yeah, exactly. Or, if I complete this step in the sourcing process, then automatically this other thing, it happens, right?
So, totally, yeah. So some automations can be shorter than others. It's just all about what efforts are your recruiters or sales individuals doing and what could be automated. And a lot of this is great too, because if somebody replies to one of those automations, they can kick right into the inbox of the recruiter. So it's not like it fully removes the human element. It just helps to streamline it, provides accountability to make sure it's happening, but also, allows the recruiters to focus on some of those other areas that they may not be able to get to when they're trying to focus on everything.
Yeah, exactly. It helps ensure that your processes are done consistently. It helps to formalize your internal processes. It helps to avoid mistakes. You can also do automations that work through your database and look for problems with your data. More and more, your data needs to be really clean in order to run these automations. In the past, we've been able to get by with data in our ATSs that's not perfectly clean, but more and more, it really has to be accurate throughout our database in order to run these automations correctly.
That's a really good takeaway that we'll circle back onto, is just the importance of clean data and what's going
Mm,
in, and how you have a process to ensure it stays clean.
mhm,
Because in this industry, the majority of staffing and recruiting firms have, 10 plus years, if not more, of resumes and contacts. And it's so much, and not only on the automation side, but also just on the day-to-day sourcing within your ATS side, like,
mhm.
how beneficial is it if your recruiters go in and do a search for certain keywords and 80% of those are out of date? And so that's
Yeah.
probably a different conversation for a different time of how to
Yeah.
best
Well,
clean
you
data.
touched on a really important area, and that is, staffing firms that have been around for a long time, they've amassed large numbers of resumes. And what's important there and where we're moving is this area of data enrichment. So more and more, you can sort of bring life to those candidates that you've amassed in your system by enriching the data. So there are companies that specialize in looking at the candidates and then updating all of the information, whether it's a phone number, or like a LinkedIn connection, or even the resume. There's multiple companies doing this, and so I would imagine that staffing firms in the future will have at least one service that is helping them enrich their database, if not multiple companies that are doing it in different ways.
Exactly. And that just comes into play as well with the automation side. I talk to business owners, you know, every week. And I would say at least once a week, the topic comes up of, well, we've got these clients that have worked with us in certain service lines, but now we've expanded. Maybe we did search, now we do staffing, or staffing now search, or
Mhm.
you have a niche in certain industries or functional areas, and you've expanded over the last 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, and
Mhm.
your client base doesn't necessarily know that. And so
Mhm.
beyond a classic email newsletter, like, what are you going to do to provide them with insight that truly gives them value of, hey, you loved the experience with us before, and we know
Mhm.
your culture, and now we have expanded into these areas. So
Yeah.
things like that, through automation, can be made much simpler than
Yeah, that's the
one-on-one
digital
phone calls.
marketing side, and that's why that's so important, is how do we keep our clients up to date with what we're doing as a business and how we can best serve them, and how do we keep them how do we keep our staffing firms top of mind with our clients
Right,
in kind of a
exactly.
low touch way.
Right. Now, I know in past conversations, we've talked about a few companies that you've come across that are doing a really good job with this. Do you want to highlight a couple?
Sure. Yeah.
Or maybe
there
it's up to you if you share the name. It's just so interesting to see what people are doing.
yeah. So, I think the starting point really is to think about companies like Amazon, for example. Amazon is just so far ahead of the world in everything that they're doing. And more, the way that we work with Amazon, and the way we engage with Amazon, that's what's coming to our industry. Um, and so when you think about Uber, for example, to me, Uber is another great example of kind of almost like the ultimate staffing firm, because they're making placements that are very short. Let's say a ride
Right.
is 20 minutes, right? So the software is connecting a candidate, a driver, with you, the client, the rider. I'm sorry, yeah, the rider. So
Yeah.
um, and so they've streamlined that process. It's highly efficient. Within, you basically put in a job order, and within 10 seconds, that job order is filled. And then within, let's say, 10 minutes, the driver, the candidate arrives, they perform the work, and then it's over. So, and when you think about all the interaction there, the mobile app, emails, the push notifications, alerts, all of that is kind of the ultimate staffing experience, and that is kind of where our industry is headed in so many ways. So I think those are really good role models for where we're moving. But there's specific companies that are doing really interesting work. So in San Francisco, there's a company called Incredible Health. They're narrowly focused on placing nurses through a mobile app experience. So nurses are added to their platform and they're credentialed. And then their clients are hospitals that hire nurses. And it's basically like a marketplace where you have vetted nurses on there, and the nurses, it's a dating app, and they can see these jobs come through. They can swipe left and right, and it's fascinating. Indeed Flex is doing really interesting work in light industrial with a mobile app, and there's another company on the East Coast called Temp Positions, run by Jim Essie. He's been very open about how the vast majority of the positions within his company are filled autonomously. So candidates are qualified, and then his software basically fills those orders automatically. Companies like Allen Recruitment in Ireland are small companies are becoming highly, highly automated. So if you think that you're a small company and you can't get onto this automation journey, I would disagree with you. Even some very small companies are doing amazing things with automation that are helping them grow really fast and are transforming their business. So there's a lot of examples. I call these companies the Teslas of the staffing industry. They're kind of like, the electric vehicles. They're fully transformed already, and now the rest of the industry is sort of catching up to where these companies are.
Right. So that leads us to our final question. If a company wants to be a part of that, right? If they want to be known as a Tesla of the industry, whether they have zero automations in place right now, or they're like, okay, we're doing quite a bit internally, but we don't know what we don't know. What are some key takeaways that they should be considering and asking themselves in the next, how many months we have left in this year, so they can get ahead of that game?
Yeah, so there's three things I would point out. Number one, the staffing firms that seem to be doing the best, and I talk to staffing firm leaders every single day, are the ones that really understand technology and they're keeping up with everything that's happening. And they have sort of a roadmap in their mind of how they need to evolve their business. They may not have a formal roadmap like laid out, but they really know how they're going to transform their business because they're keeping up. So more and more we have to lean into technology much more than we may be comfortable with because of this acceleration of change. Things are moving more quickly than ever before. Number two, the future doesn't need as many staffing firms as there are today because the technology is making staffing firms so much more efficient that you will have to invest in staffing technology just to survive. But also the flip side of that is there's never been more opportunities today to invest in high ROI staffing technology solutions. And so those investments pay off in terms of faster growth and higher levels of efficiencies. And they are key to surviving the years ahead as we go through this digital transformation, which, by the way, the Industrial Revolution went for several decades, and we're just at the very, very beginning stages of the digital transformation. This isn't like we go through this for 10 years and it's over. This is only accelerating. There's going to be so much more of this ahead.
No, that's great. And I think it'll be really interesting to see how staffing firms versus search firms, right? And a lot of companies do both, but most are primarily one and then have added the other, or are really only primarily the one. It'll be very interesting, right? Because when we talk about, virtual reality for a forklift driver, someone who does executive search may say, okay, there's no way that's applicable to me. However, if you start thinking about, well, you offered another service line and you want to inform your clients about this without independent communications, like there's so many applications ranging from, we'll call it, light industrial hourly staffing to retained search. I mean, the industry is incredibly broad. So I don't want to imply that one solution fits all of it, because it doesn't. But no matter what, if you think about it, like going back 20 years to now, everybody's got a website, right? Everybody's got certain processes that make momentum and help their candidates and their clients. And I think technology is going to be laced throughout that.
Yeah, no, you make a really good point, is that there isn't one solution that's going to fit all the different segments of the staffing. When you look at, say, light industrial staffing versus executive search, the type of technology that you need to be effective in those areas is completely different. But all the areas will be touched in a massive way by technology. And even the executive search firms, where there's an awful lot of personal interaction, even those firms will see a lot of change in this decade. And there is one more point I wanted to make about an earlier comment about like the role of the recruiter
Yeah.
that we talked about. The bots that we're seeing, more and more recruiters are going to be working side by side with bots to get their job done. And not just a few bots, but there are going to be times when recruiters unleash like literally hundreds of bots to perform tasks on their behalf, to get in touch with candidates or to perform certain activities. So not only will recruiters have access to, sort of almost like multiple versions of themselves to perform jobs, there will be bots that will be coaching them along the way, and AI that will be managing and sort of overseeing their work as well. So we're going to be surrounded by AI and bots, and it's going to help us get our jobs done more efficiently. And it's all overall, it's a very positive thing.
Right. And if you can think about, the big leaps between 20 years ago when recruiting was literally looking through a phone book or seeing a billboard and literally calling people, to now where it's, mass automated emails based on Boolean searches to find the right candidates, as an example, to, what the equivalent of that is, of where we're approaching, right? Just like how different if you were to tell someone, hey, the phone book's not going to be a thing for you anymore. You're going to be able to hit a button and get a message out to everybody, which will help the candidate process, help the client process. Like I just view that as like the leaping point. Like we're at that next major leaping point right now. And it'll just be really fascinating to see who emerges as a leader in it.
Yeah. Another way to think about it is really from the customer's point of view. If you're a big company like UPS or Microsoft, what this means is that you're going to be able to acquire staffing services more cost efficiently and faster with better people that more accurately match the descriptions. So we as an industry are going to be able to deliver better services more efficiently, and that is going to enable us to grow the industry. But it will grow with fewer staffing firms because staffing firms will scale through technology. In the past, we've scaled by adding more recruiters or more operational people. In the future, we're going to be scaling by basically adding more servers to our capabilities.
Right. So each company will cover more ground, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. So through software, we can quickly scale up and we can quickly scale down. So I would imagine that in the future, when we have recessions, usually it can be devastating. I've, a couple times myself, I've had to, basically scale an entire staffing firm down by 50% during a recessionary time period. In the future, it will be basically dialing down servers by, in terms of the bandwidth and how much we're using them by a similar amount. And then when things pick up again, like right now, we're in a massive pickup mode. Your servers scale up and we add more and more bots to do the work.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, Maurice, thank you so much. This has been a wealth of information. I hope everybody who's listening finds value in this. I think there's a lot out there that people are starting to hear about, but maybe not implementing yet. So hopefully this was a beneficial conversation. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to myself or Maurice. LinkedIn is always a good way to get a hold of us, and comment, right? Like share with us the things you're thinking about this. Does this sound like the worst thing in the world? Is it the best thing? Are you guys curious about certain ways to implement this? Let's start a conversation. All right. Thanks, Maurice. We'll
Thanks,
talk to you
Kelly.
soon. All right.